Geopolitical Views is in Japan. He lives there in Tokyo. Ben, are you online?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thanks for being here. How are you, and how is the general feeling of the people there now? Are they settling down at all?
Well, it seems pretty calm, actually. I mean, the only problem is the trains aren't running properly, and of course the areas that were hit are in bad shape. But Japan is one of the best disaster-prepared nations on Earth. In any other country, if they'd had something like this, we'd have had probably 10 times more dead people, at least. So, it could have been a lot worse. But nonetheless, there's clearly something going on here that's not just natural. And that's what I'd like to talk about today.
Okay, well, before we get into possible causes of this, I want to get some specifics on what you know about this nuclear plant issue. First of all, Brad Steiger is with me. Ben, say hello to Brad.
Hello, Brad.
Hi, Ben.
All right, we've outlined the nuclear issue, the emergency that has been declared by the Japanese government. We apparently have up to 5 reactors that are in trouble in various stages of inability to cool them down. They've been shut down. They've been damaged. The one particular one, it's Fukushima or something like that, is in very bad. Yeah, it has been emitting radioactive steam all day now, and they are officially announcing that they're doing it, but before they announced it, it was clear that there was radiation leaking by way of steam, so they're venting steam now, trying to take the pressure of the core down. The pressure had exceeded by over twice its maximum allowable levels. So that thing was ready to blow. I guess it had a couple more levels to go. But
yeah, all right. Look, this is right now. All they're doing is evacuating 3,000 people in a 3-kilometer radius. Okay?
Six.
Well, maybe it's up to date to 6, but nonetheless, I mean, the power plants are located away from population centers, and I don't think we're going to see anything on the scale of Chernobyl.
Good.
Here's the problem, Ben. Ben, excuse me. Here's the problem.
Yep.
If there is a core meltdown, and they put this one particular complex right on the coast, right on the ocean, if there is a core meltdown, it will go into the ground, the ocean will go into the hole, it will continue to produce steam for God knows how long. These core meltdowns are not a joke. Chernobyl didn't melt down like this, but if this one does, it'll produce steam. Now tell me what happens to steam, ladies and gentlemen. It goes into the air, and it agglutinates, accumulates, and amalgamates. It joins up with weather systems. And where do those weather systems go? They come from Japan across the Pacific. They cross Hawaii if they're down low, but generally they go right to the Pacific West Coast. We could have radiation here in 36 hours if there's a meltdown. That is a scientific fact.
If there's a meltdown.
Correct.
But at this point, there's not a meltdown. And one thing, though, if there is radiation, you've got to eat lots of calcium, apparently. The Japanese have a lot of ways to deal with radiation poisoning.
It's potassium, and that'll only protect the thyroid gland.
I wouldn't at this point be causing people to panic because there's no evidence it's melted down yet or that it's going to.
No, but we have to look at all the eventualities, and that is one. They are releasing steam now, and that steam is going to go up.
Then the people in your area need to come up with a plan, a contingency plan, for such an eventuality as they're doing here.
Question is, will our government do that for us? We have to take the initiative and do it for ourselves, and one of the things we can do is consume potassium because that will, it actually binds with iodine and protects the thyroid gland. Now, that said, Ben, 4 trains have been lost. They're gone. No one knows where they are.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, they've got it on TV all the time. At a certain point, it's just so horrific, I turned it off. But, again, I still want to get to what I think is a real issue, which is the cause of this earthquake. And this is a very important thing.
All right.
I know you don't want to, you don't like...
now, here's the deal. I'm going to let Dan do this because we're friends and colleagues. He has his views, and that's fine. And when he's finished, I'll bring up the other side of it. So we got 2 sides of a coin here. We're going to skip the break and go right through here. So thank you, network. Just turn that down. Ben, go ahead, and please don't get too deeply into it. Just spell it out as best you can.
Okay, I was previously warned specifically by Japanese military intelligence that there would be an earthquake the following day in Niigata Prefecture because of what I wrote about David Rockefeller. I have this on tape. I can prove it. And the next day, there were two 6.8 earthquakes right on top of Japan's largest nuclear reactor, which was not on a fault zone. Okay?
I remember when that happened.
And I remember, there were threats beforehand that they would attack Japan with an earthquake. I've had these threats emailed to me by these people, and it has to do with a fight over control of the global financial system. And furthermore, I've talked to people in the U.S. military intelligence and high up in the CIA, and they both say that the earthquake devices are located in underground bunkers, one in Nevada and one in New Mexico. And even if I'm wrong, it's certainly worthwhile. I mean, if America is really an ally of Japan and we have a mutual defense agreement, then patriotic American troops need to go and make sure that those machines are not in the control of, madmen or people working for the oil companies, okay? And furthermore, and there's another possibility that was given to me by a KGB agent, and I take it seriously because he provided me evidence. There may be, I know this is way off the deep end, but I'm going to say it anyway. There may be a rogue artificial intelligence that's doing this, okay? Even all the entire network of military supercomputers and all that kind of stuff may be doing it without human intervention. That is a possibility you also need to examine. Would it be possible, as a theoretical exercise, for a rogue artificial intelligence to set off these machines or weapons of mass destruction without human intervention? And if so, you need to make sure it can't do that. You have to disable any ability for a non-human actor to do that. It's a possibility. I know it's way out there, but it's a possibility you need to examine. That's all I have to say on that.
Okay, that's fine. Now,
but the other thing I will say, though, is the same people who issued this threat before it happened. I've also threatened to hit the New Madrid fault line, which is in the U.S., all right?
Well, that's something that's been a lot of talk about lately.
Because it's so, it's like, what?
The New Madrid fault is overdue for a slip. We know that.
I understand, and that's why it's easy to hit. You just set off a bomb or hit it with a electromagnetic pulse weapon, it can do it. The point is that you need to make sure that there are no humans who want to do such a thing in control of such machinery within your country. Even if I'm wrong, it's a serious enough risk that there's no harm in making sure that that's not true and making sure that could not happen. It's just like anything. You make, you act to prevent stuff. Even if you think the possibility is rare, it's like a tsunami, if the well is once in 100 years, well, okay, but if it happens, it's horrible. Or if it's a meteorite, it may not happen, but it might, and you might as well be ready and make contingency plans. And then the same is, something is happening. There's something seriously wrong within your military-industrial establishment. There can be no doubt about it. It's morally wrong, and it's economically wrong, and it's destroying your country, and it's causing enormous pain to the rest of the planet.
Well,
you are a rogue nation. You have you're invading countries. You're stealing their oil. You're murdering people, and the entire world is just shocked at your government's behavior.
Well, the tragedy of it. You're right.
And they're
you're
trying
right.
to isolate the people.
You're right, Ben. The tragedy of it is, it's not the American people. It is the government, which is no longer responsive to the populace here. And I just want to caution everyone out there, when you see this stuff on the internet running around, it's HARP. Oh, no, it's a scalar weapon. Let's look at the geology and the science. Jim Birkeland, who is without question the world's foremost earthquake prediction and mechanical authority, put in his newsletter last month, because of the moon's perigee coming up on the 19th of March, the closest it's been in, 18 years, it will exert tremendous pressure on any number of fault systems around the planet. So we're within a week of that. So you've got the moon perigee, you've also got syzygy and other issues. And then, on top of that, he put this in his newsletter a month ago. Keep in mind, he has an 80+% accuracy rate going back to the 76 World Series earthquake, or so I forget which year it was. Anyway, Jim will be on Monday to talk through all this.
That was the first time they used HARP, too, eh?
Uh-huh.
That was when they attacked China.
It's that was a bizarre.
You can have a guy. You can have, like, they have this psychic in Brazil. They deliberately use this psychic to predict stuff. They actually say, we're going to do such and such a date, and then they go, the gods told me, or I can see in the stars that it's going to happen, and then that person gets a following, and they use that.
Right.
As
Well,
a way
Jim
of
is
or making it seem.
Yeah, he's a geologist.
The moon was at perigee 19 years ago, and this didn't happen, did it?
No, it doesn't always happen, of course.
It happens every 18, 19 years. We don't get this kind of stuff every 18, 19
no,
years. I suspect this guy works for the oil companies, and they tell him in advance what they're going to do, and then he comes up with a pseudo-scientific explanation to make it seem like it's a natural phenomenon.
Ben,
I
have to tell you, I've known him for a long, long time, and he's a true geologist and a scientist and a singular individual. So in any other case, that might be worth considering, but I'll be happy to introduce you to him, and you can spend an hour talking to him, and he is an impeccable human being.
Yeah, he has a solid reputation.
Yeah, he's in his 70s, and he's no flake.
I don't know him, and I don't want to get in slander, but I'm saying that...
no, you're right. They can set people up and play games. Yeah, there's no question that what you're saying is correct, nor does perigee mean a massive catastrophe every 18 years or how often it happens. Yeah. Doesn't happen. It did this time happen on that particular window, which is what Jim calls them. We'll see.
Right,
the point is...
it is true that Japan is the most earthquake-prone country on Earth, and we were overdue for a large earthquake, and it may well be a natural thing, and it just, it happens to be happening at a coincidental time when there's a battle over control of the financial system is reaching its peak, its final conclusion.
Well, the China earthquake... The China earthquake, Ben, that you mentioned when it had the colored, you remember, Brad, the colored lights in the sky, broad daylight, that was highly suspicious because the mountain near the village and the city that was so devastated apparently contained an enormous underground military facility, and that mountain was said by the villagers, the city dwellers as well, to be belching gigantic concrete forms out of its top. It was bizarre. So, I concur that was very suspicious.
Okay, I'll also say that the earthquake that they told me they would cause in Niigata was preceded also by a light show in the sky, and I have not heard of such a light show before this earthquake at this point in time.
Right.
So it's not an open and shut case. This is something. But the point I wish to make, and I want to repeat it, is you need to examine these possibilities. I mean, especially. Like I say, this is the KGB talking. They're saying they're worried about a rogue artificial intelligence inside the U.S. military-industrial complex computer networks, and it's way out there, but it's possible. I mean, scientifically speaking, it makes sense. I mean, the amount of computers on the internet and all those connections are more than equivalent now to a single human brain.
It's beyond that.
It could happen, and we should prepare. I don't think life is necessarily...
Ben, we don't have a lot of time, but what I want to underscore is what you just said. We should prepare. And for goodness sakes, you've made the point, and it's a very good one, that Japan is the most prepared country in the world for natural and artificial disasters. They are. And in this case, I'm sure they're doing a wonderful job in the area to try to put things in order as quickly as they can. But when Mother Nature, for whatever reason, turns itself loose, you've got nuclear power plants, 55 plants there with multiple reactors in each one of them, basically. They're asking for big trouble. Nuclear power is insane anyhow, in my view. How do you see it?
Well, I see it as a battle between the nuclear and oil lobbies, and I don't think we need either nuclear power or oil as a source of energy.
That's been proven.
I believe that both these lobbies are obsessed with centralized control over power because 70% of the economy is energy, and if you control the energy, you're like the most powerful man on the country.
All right, I got another question.
And so there's a battle over energy between the global warming nuclear people and the war on terror, i.e. steel oil people, and I think they're both wrong. And there's plenty of energy technologies which people.
We do know that, and the Japanese, in fact, launched a water-powered small car within the past year, which ought to be
and
all
I found out they sent some goons in to shut down that factory.
They did, huh? Well, not a surprise.
They did. No, and then they issued a story that it was a fraud. Well, it wasn't.
No, I know.
The Japanese are preparing to release this technology, and we're also going to enroll it in Canada. You could turn, like, if you got this technology out there, you could turn Canada into a tropical paradise.
Mm-hmm.
You really could.
Okay.
If energy is free or close to free, then there's all sorts of stuff you can do. The problem is you have, if you immediately release this new technology, you would have social collapse and anarchy because, you know, the entire sort of economic social structure is now built on selling energy. And so there has to be a very carefully thought out transition to make sure that all the oil companies have new jobs and new ways of making money so they don't oppose it anymore. You know, and there's a lot they can do. They can go turn deserts green. They can go, you know, build artificial planets. There's so much giant engineering work out there for them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need to sell oil. And it's like I say, the problem is that the oil industry was controlled originally by gangsters, and it's still controlled by gangsters. And they murder people, and they blackmail people, and they bribe people to keep their control.
And they destroy
and these
entire...
are the people we're worried about, and these are what we've been fighting.
Right. Anyway, we are happy to hear that things are rebuilding and that there has not been a meltdown, and we
not yet.
pray that will not.
We have one more question, Ben. Ben, one more question, please.
Yes.
We don't know how many people have been killed, injured, or are missing. I got one report today that up to 88,000 people were missing. Now, in the chaos of any kind of a catastrophe, this kind of figure is not to be unexpected. What is the latest figure there of potential casualties from the earthquake?
All right, well, you got to remember, the Japanese government has probably the best statistics in the world, and but I don't know what the latest number is.
All right, if you find out, let me know.
However, yeah, I will. I'll send you a link to the latest article about it. You can put it up on your page.
Good.
But there's finally, also, I'd like to tell you what they teach the Japanese to do in an event of an earthquake, so people there can know. One thing is, if you can, you know, get out to an open space, and if you can't, don't hide if it's a table with sturdy legs, hide under it. Otherwise, hide in between two solid pieces of furniture, because even if the legs crush, the upper part of the furniture will protect you.
Good.
And the other place that's safe is a door frame, and make sure you turn off all fire-type things, you know, gas burners, anything like that.
Get to the gas line to your house and shut that off.
And if there's a tsunami, you don't run away, you run up. So if you can't get away in time, you know, get into a solid concrete building and go up to the highest floor you can. And that's the advice they've been giving people here, and that has saved an awful lot of lives. Like I say, they could have been millions dead if they hadn't been prepared.
Wow. Okay. All right, Ben. Thank you very much for taking time. Keep me posted, will you, please? And I really appreciate it.
Take care, Ben.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. Ciao. Bye.
Ciao. Is that Chinese? Ciao. Well, he's a true man of the planet, I guess. A man for all seasons. Ciao. Maybe it is Chinese. C-H-O-W, isn't it? All right.
No,
just kidding. Just kidding. All right, let's get right to it. Hour number 3, going over to Tokyo. Talk to Benjamin Fulford, as we always do once a month. Ben is on the last day of the month this month. Had a conflict in schedules last week, but he's here tonight. Are you there, Ben?
Yes, I'm here, and it's actually March 1st here.
Congratulations, we made it.
Yep.
I mean, I should say...
we're headed for some major turbulence in the United States. The Federal Reserve Board crime syndicate is on its last legs, according to all the different information I'm able to get.
Well, that would be nice.
The most shocking thing I've heard, and I've confirmed this from multiple sources, is that they're starting to steal people's bank accounts to keep the Fed going for a bit longer.
You've been doing that for a while.
One person was worth $150 million and another was worth $180 million. They both told me that they can only take out $3,000 a month of their own money from their own bank account.
That's it? Wow.
That's it. I mean, so they're looting people's bank accounts now to keep their fraudulent, financial thing going for a couple more months. And I talked to someone in the Rothschild family who told me that, mathematically speaking, they cannot last beyond June, okay?
Huh.
So that's when probably you'll see the end of the fraudulent corporate government in the United States and return to liberty for the American people. That's the latest I'm hearing. I'm hoping it's true. But the future, of course, is only decided when it actually happens, so we shall see.
Yeah, well, that'd be nice. I'll vote for that.
Now, the other thing I've heard that's important for people in America to be aware of is that there is a plan to overthrow all the autocratic regimes in the Middle East. They're going to send in Egyptian troops to Libya, this is what I've heard, to get rid of Gaddafi and, take over the oil industry there away from his tribe. And after Libya is finished, they're going to definitely, I've heard this both from a member of the Japanese cabinet, a senior person of the Knights of Malta and MI6, is that they're definitely going to go after the Saudi royal family and topple the regime there. And that's probably going to be in March. Anyway, this is what they're planning. I've also heard from a Pentagon source and others that they're still planning to use all this unrest to try to foment demonstrations, anti-government riots in the United States, and use that as an excuse for martial law. But I've also heard that the Federal Reserve Board crime syndicate was planning to use mercenaries, now operating in Afghanistan and in Iraq, against the American people, but that the Pentagon has told them they will fight and they will not act against American citizens. Okay, so the Pentagon is not going to allow these criminals to get away with their plan. I've also heard that Henry Kissinger and George Bush Sr. and a few other of these people, Cheney, have been told they're not allowed to leave the United States. They were planning to flee to Paraguay, but they cannot. However, David Rockefeller and his clan have fled to India right now, and they're allowed to leave the country because they're considered not to be as bad. They manufactured that fake Cold War, but they weren't as totally evil as Bush and Kissinger. This is what I've been hearing. So truly historic things are happening. There can be no doubt about it.
Well, there's talk today that Cameron in England is calling for some kind of a united group to go in there militarily and to remove Gaddafi, which means lots of deaths, lots of bloodshed. And would that surprise you?
No, it wouldn't. Like I say, they're trying to remove all the different governments that were set in, autocratic governments that were set up by oil companies, and it's part of their plan. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if they did that. Now, personally, I don't really, I just hope that whoever comes in, is good to the Libyan people. But I don't think that I can take any sides in this whole issue. I just don't know enough about it. I'm certainly no fan of Gaddafi's, but I'm not his enemy either. And I think this is something that, anyway, this is a group. The group is behind this. They claim that they're the Gnostics. These are an ancient group they claim they go back to Pythagoras, the Greek mathematician, and they say they're against the bloodline and dynastic rule, and that they're in favor of meritocracy, that is the rule by whoever's got the best talent, and that they're behind all these movements. I just don't know. I mean, there's a lot of conflicting information coming in right now, so it's hard to figure out what's really going on. There's always what they call the fog of war. There's just so much turbulence and so much conflicting information. But the other very interesting thing I've been hearing is that they've now found that the Federal Reserve Board and the people who own the printing press for the U.S. dollar were claiming their rights based on a fraudulent contract. a fraudulent treaty. They rewrote a treaty called the Schweitzer Accords from the 1920s and illegally claimed the right to be able to print dollars, and they don't actually have that right. And the person who knows about this is a guy called R.C. Dam, because he was officially the guy who's supposed to sign everything, and he's in a Cambodian hospital. They tried to kill him. You know, he was probably raised by the CIA, and he's probably not a nice guy, but the people behind him are even worse than he is, and he's under the protection of the Cambodian royal family now. But he's apparently spilling the beans on this whole fraudulent U.S. dollar crime syndicate, and I'm still hearing, although I'm waiting and waiting, it doesn't happen for, you know, like at least 1,000 arrests of prominent financiers and others. They keep saying soon, soon, and it still doesn't happen.
Who's they? Who is they? Who keeps saying this?
Remember, there was a very peculiar incident in June of 2009 when two Japanese carrying $134 billion worth of bonds were detained by Italian security police.
They grabbed him in Italy. Sure, yeah, I remember.
Yeah, well, one of the people involved in this is a guy called Neil Keenan, who's very definitely connected with all sorts of U.S. government, CIA, NSA types. It says that what happened is after those people were seized, the members of the Italian P2 Freemason Lodge told me they could cash these bonds and use them for humanitarian purposes, use the money for humanitarian purposes. So I introduced them to a member of the British royal family, who then got someone from the old Chinese imperial dynasty to come up with $1 trillion worth of gold-backed Federal Reserve bonds dating back from the 1930s, and they gave them to the Freemason P2 Lodge. The P2 Lodge then tried to take these bonds and cash them with the Chinese Communist government, with the Senate Financial Committee, and with the United Nations. And what happened, this is some kind of big investigation, and the person who had the bonds is a guy called, ultimately the trail led to a guy called Giancarlo Bruno, who's the head of the financial service industry at the Davos World Forum. And they came forward. The UN said, we'll give you $100 million to just forget about these bonds. So the trail led to ultimately what was uncovered in this investigation, because these guys were like followed 24 hours a day, bugged, is that the structure of the secret government has now been quite clearly figured out. Traditionally it's been headed by a person called M1. Under him there'll be 3 people called M3, and then under them 7 people, M5, 5 people, M5, and then M9, and altogether 555 people, all of them at least 33rd degree Freemasons, and most of them are heads of large international organizations or governments, and they've been the secret government of the world. And the official government is the UN, the BIS, the Bank for International Settlements, and the European Union, and underneath that the Federal Reserve Board, the IMF, and all that kind of stuff. So the secret government has now been uncovered, and most of their members have been figured out. But if these people are taken down, I mean, this is going to be very, very revolutionary. This is going to be far bigger than the fall of the Soviet Union, because these people have been running the planet and creating wars and mayhem for at least 300 years, if not longer. So I believe, truly, we're on the verge of very, very historical changes. The sort of stuff that people read about in their in their grade school history classes like 2,000 years from now. So anyway, it's totally mind-boggling. And of course, what they did, and what they've been doing, is they give government leaders a bribe and say, "Oh, you're the new president. Congratulations. Here's your Swiss bank account with $1 billion in it, and you do what we tell you, or else we'll kill you." And what's been happening is that more and more of the governments they've installed are being overthrown. Turkey got rid of those people, and there was a major NATO member with a 1.5 million man army. And England and the Rothschilds split off from the Rockefellers and the Federal Reserve Board. And you can determine this because, for example, Obama returned a statue of Winston Churchill, and now Obama's not invited to Prince William's wedding. This is all, the sort of stuff you could see in the corporate propaganda media, but underneath there's been a fundamental split.
Huh. All right, interesting. Hold on, Ben, right there. We have to pause. We'll come back and continue our monthly visit with Benjamin Fulford. Always fascinating in just a couple. Okay, back with Benjamin Fulford in Tokyo, giving us a quick look around the world, as he always does each month. All right, my friend, go right ahead.
Okay, well, the other thing, I guess, that's in the news in the U.S. is that there's a deadlock over the budget, and that the government was supposedly shut down on March 4th.
This happened once before, and nothing much happened.
Well, this time it might be different, but, you know, the real reason it's shutting down is not because of a disagreement over the budget, but it's because the Chinese have said we're not going to finance your fraud any longer. And they tried to cause, you know, chaos in China, but they got nowhere. They tried to stage some kind of Jasmine revolution in China, and all he got to show up was some foreign journalists and Chinese police, no Chinese citizens. So they just cannot pull off any, mayhem in China.
Right.
So they've lost control. All their allies in China aren't with them anymore. So this is a major, major change. Of course, the Chinese don't get involved in other countries' governments. They don't take sides. They're not trying to, cause revolutions or whatever. But at the same time, they're not going to pay for a bunch of thugs to kill them, which is what they were doing by buying the U.S. government bonds. But again, this is going to be, things are going to get worse for Americans for the next couple of months.
Gee, I could have told you that.
Everybody to make sure they had, some bags of rice and beans and, basic food stuff stashed away. It doesn't cost a lot of money.
No.
Maybe $20 for a month's supply of rice.
That's right.
And $40 for beans or something. And just get a couple of months of stuff, just in case. I mean, it can't hurt, But things are going to get chaotic because the people who have been running the Federal Reserve Board and the criminal Washington government do not plan to go quietly. They're going to cause as much trouble as they can. They're in Washington now. They're threatening everybody. They're pointing guns at everybody. And they're doing everything they can to keep themselves going. So it is going to be hard on American citizens for the next couple of months. But I assure you that this is just the last bit of nightmare before everybody wakes up, and they're free again. But and again, I've always been optimistic because I'm not in the United States, and the rest of the world is doing just fine. Okay, people are prospering, and there is peace, and
where is this peace?
Well, Japan, China is peaceful, India is peaceful. The only place that's not peaceful is the United States because they're out there, they have the Pentagon subcontracting for oil and mining.
A little bit of trouble going on in the Middle East, a little bit of trouble in Iraq, just a little war in Afghanistan, a little war in Pakistan, a little war in Africa.
The oil companies and their flunkies and the Federal Reserve Board, and these are the people who are going to be taken down and removed from power. Already, like I say, they lost Turkey, which is a huge thing for them. And their puppet regimes are being replaced all over the place. And Pakistan has finally broken off with the CIA, and they're now in open conflict. And you can confirm this in the propaganda media. You don't need to read the internet to find this out. So they're losing everywhere. I mean, their control is just falling apart bit by bit. But yeah, I mean, the wars are caused by the United States corporate criminal government. They go out there, they hire, they create the organizations like Al-Qaeda, and then they blow places up, and then they use that as an excuse for martial law and war. And they've been doing this forever. They don't. That's what they do. They start wars and they make money from it. They steal stuff. They get slaves. They sell drugs. I mean, it's awful. Just awful what happened to the American government, and it's a shame because the American people are such a nice people, you know, that they had to get these criminals, you know, in their midst. It's really a tragedy. And I really feel sorry for all the unemployed Americans and everyone else who's being hurt by these people. Like I say, the entire planet is trying to help the American people right now. They're trying to help them get rid of their criminal government, and it will happen. But it's going to take a couple more months. That's what I keep hearing.
Well, I think we've been...
You know, what's been happening is that they've been freezing all their money. Mm-hmm. They've taken all these accounts that are linked to the Clintons and the Bushes and all those guys, and they've been freezing them. And what they've been doing is, because they still control the United States, they've been going into banks they do control and stealing personal assets and stuff, and to keep themselves going, they've gone into people's safety deposit boxes and taken out the gold and sold it. They melted down all this silver equipment they used for the Manhattan Project and sold that silver to keep themselves going. It's like a junkie, you know, who's selling everything in his house he can get to keep himself going and keep getting his stuff.
The only money I've seen...
they can still, you know, again, what the math is that they can do it for another couple of months. They can pay their flunkies and their mercenaries and all those other people to obey them, but not for much longer, because they are being cut off systematically.
The only people whose money I've seen or heard about being confiscated are Tunisia's Ben Ali. Muammar Gaddafi's money is all frozen now, and Mubarak's money was frozen, but I haven't heard of the Clintons' money or the Bush's money being frozen.
Well, that's because you're in the United States, and that information is not allowed out there.
And you're getting it over in Japan?
In Japan, Japan is also, unfortunately, still under their control. They have a network of police officers and military types they use as their control grid. They have like there's 3 stories in a high-rise building behind the parliament that's full of CIA people who run this place. And Japan is a colony. It's not a free country yet. And the problem is the Japanese people have developed personal relations with the American people, and they are grateful for all the help the Americans provided after World War II. So there is a conflict here. They want to support the American people, and they don't want to betray them. At the same time, the old control group, they don't know what to do. They're just going according to the way it always was. So Japan is still not a free country. They're going to stick out with the Americans no matter what happens. That's what seems to be the stance here in Japan.
Sounds like they don't have much choice. Hold on, Ben. We'll be back. I want to get your take on North Korea's threats again to go to war with the South, which began annual military maneuvers with the formerly United States today. We'll get that from you and more. Okay, North Korea once again threatens, after a while, you know, it's the boy who cried wolf, they're threatening so often now. Gee. Threatening South Korea and the United States with war because they're holding their annual military maneuvers. What do you think? Are we going to see war between the North and the South? Now the Chinese, of course...
What's happening is the South wants to unify, and the North wants to unify with the South. The South is controlled by a secret government henchman who enforces his rule with an army of assassins and is obeying orders from the Federal Reserve Board. And until he's removed, they will continue posturing and causing trouble, but it's all empty talk. I don't even pay attention to it anymore because I know they're not going to be able to start a war, and I know it's just a distraction. It's like a nervous little neurotic dog barking. It's not a danger of any sort, okay?
I see.
So I don't pay much
nervous
attention.
little neurotic dog barking would end up on the dinner table in South Korea, as you know.
Yeah. But anyway, what I want to get to the point is what they do is they approach people who have big influence on public opinion.
Kind of like you.
Religious leaders and, politicians, media personalities. They do this worldwide. Anybody who can, convince tens of thousands of people to go in a certain direction, they get to these people, and either they threaten them, or they blackmail them, or they bribe them, or they get them to work for them. Now, I've heard, and I've been now meeting a lot of high-level government agents from all over the world, and I want to say something about government agents. One thing is that they never carry a cell phone because they know that they're portable listening devices. The other is that they always have some sort of independent income, so they cannot trace a bank account, for a government bank account, to them, But these people, the way they look at the world is so different from what you read in the corporate propaganda trash that it's almost like it's a different world, the way they look at things. But I'm going to try to explain a few of the things that I found out from, for example, I've talked to a member of the Tibetan royal family and a member of the Dalai Lama's own clan, and they told me, for example, they switched the Dalai Lama, the real one, with a spy or a puppet or whatever, and they use him to influence public opinion in the Buddhist world. The other thing they do, here in Japan, there's this group called Soka Gakkai, or a big Buddhist organization that has 8 million members and their own political party, and they blackmailed their leader, Mr. Ikeda Daisaku, threatened him with jail unless he went along with their program, and they used these people to infiltrate the police and the media and use them as part of their control grid for Japan. And this guy who was working for them is now in a coma, and they're losing control of that person, and they're trying to replace the fraudulent Dalai Lama. So what's happening is that the Buddhists who are controlled by the secret government are kicking them out, and that's going to mean major, major changes in Asia over the coming months. In the U.S., of course, they use these so-called Christian Zionists, and of course the corporate media. There's 5 corporations that control 90% of everything, all the textbooks, the radio stations, the TV stations, Hollywood. You people have been lied to from the minute you set foot into a kindergarten. Every time you turn on your TV, you've been living in a world of lies and control. And what's going to happen is when these people are removed, it's just, you're going to go through a period, I don't know how to explain it, but it's like the Japanese after World War II. They're suddenly told that their emperor is not a god and that, they're not winning. They actually lost the war. And until that moment, they thought they were winning the war. Or maybe they had their doubts because they saw the bombers in the sky, but the same thing's happening. So all this show in North Korea, these fake wars, all that kind of stuff is just a sideshow. It's a distraction. It's theater. It's not real. And the good news is that they're not going to start World War III. They really wanted to, but the Pentagon, they did at least 9 or 10 war games against China. Each time they lost, and they know that if there's a real war, 90% of the planet would be destroyed, and they don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So it's not the people who wanted to get. There's a group, okay, of people, and I've mentioned this on the very first radio show. I've now confirmed it from multiple sources, okay? There's a group of people whose ancestry goes to the ancient nation of Khazar,
sure.
Who are
the Khazarian Empire,
Lucifer, Khazarian Luciferians. Okay, they worship Lucifer, the sun god, and they were planning to actually create artificially the Armageddon scenario written in the Old Testament, and you can even see it in Israeli newspapers. They refer to Gog and Magog, and if you remember, this old prophecy was that 2 mighty nations would fight, and 90% of humanity would be wiped out, and then the remainder would be enslaved by the Jews, but it's not really the Jews, it's the Khazarian Satanists.
Well, the Khazars...
300 slaves.
Yeah.
So if you look at Israeli newspapers, they refer to China, Russia, and Iran as Magog and United States and Western Europe as Magog, and they were trying to get them to kill each other. The problem is that sensible people in the Pentagon and in China and Russia say, well, no, we're not going to go along with this crazy plan. And so this insane, monstrous plan is just not going to happen. And if you want to know who's in on it, you just find out, go to Paraguay, go to Argentina, and find out which government leaders have bought big ranches there. You'll find that Berlusconi and Sarkozy from France and Bush and all these people, and then the Unification Church in North Korea, they all bought huge chunks of land in Paraguay because they thought they were going to go down to South America because the Southern Hemisphere would be free from nuclear fallout in the event of a nuclear war, and wait for humanity to kill itself off before they could go and rule the planet, minus 4 billion people. They were literally trying to kill 4 billion people. And they based their plans on scientific whores, scientific prostitutes who they pay them money to say what, in scientific jargon, what they want to hear, which is that there are too many people on the planet. This is nonsense. It's pure nonsense. You could have 20 billion people and twice as many nature preserves with the technology that they're suppressing.
I understand that.
So what I'm saying is that a bunch of crazy people, fanatic religious cultists, took over the world's financial system, and we're trying to artificially create end times. It's just so ridiculous that most people, when they hear something that's so outrageous, as J. Edgar Hoover said, they go into a state of denial. It's just too big and too monstrous to believe. But the proof is there. Yeah. It's all, it's not a crazy story. I can prove it in the court of law. There's enough evidence and testimony from people within these groups to know that these insane plans were being carried out. And we got to thank God for the Chinese, because they're the ones who finally stepped forward and acted decisively to stop them.
Well, I agree with you. Now, hold on.
Too. The British finally woke up and kicked them out.
The Chinese are a sobering element.
News, of course, is Ireland.
Well, we'll find out more about Ireland from you in just a minute, Ben. Hang on. Ben Fulford, the Asia-Pacific Bureau Chief of Forbes magazine for 8 years and one of our regular contributors here each month. We'll be right back with Ben. Okay, and back with Ben, our final segment this month. It's amazing what happened.
Yeah, look, I started getting angry at all those psychopaths who have been ruling the United States for the past century. I would like to end on a more positive note, which is that once this group of, murdering gangsters is removed from the control of the United States, all sorts of incredibly wonderful things are going to happen. Anybody who reads the information on the internet knows, petroleum is not needed for energy. We can have free energy, and that'll mean, or close to free energy, and that'll mean everybody can live like a millionaire, okay? They didn't want this technology out because they would mean they would lose control and power, and now that's going to end. The other good news is that they already have the technology to make people live at least twice as long, and probably as time proceeds, people will be able to live thousands of years. This is not science fiction. This is not fantasy. It's real. People can become almost immortal with technology that's already there. Take a look at the picture in the Indian newspaper of David Rockefeller, who's 96. And you can compare it with a picture of him from 5 years ago. He looks younger now, okay? He's one of the first people on the list for this new stuff. Because I guess he can afford it, and he's old, so he's,
Well, you spent time with him. I mean, you shook the man's hand. How did he seem physically to you? This is about, you saw him 5 years ago, right? 6?
Well, when I saw him, he was, he would kind of fade in and out. Like he would be very, very sharp, you know, and aware, and then he'd kind of fade out, and then he'd be sharp and aware again. And I think he's probably younger now than he was when I met him, at least based on the pictures.
Well, I understand what you're saying.
But the man definitely had all his faculties about him.
Yeah.
It was just like it was sort of like an old TV. It takes a while to turn on, but then it's there in full color. That's sort of what the impression I got from him when I met him.
There's no question, they have advanced, I wouldn't call them age reversal, but certainly age delaying technologies that they're all getting.
One thing, for example, human growth hormone can make you look or feel about 20 years younger. Okay, that's a real one that's out there.
We have, you can find it online at Learn the Secrets, plural, Learn the Secrets to Youth.com. That's Chrysalis. They used to sponsor here, and the stuff works, and it's.
Yeah. And the other thing, of course, is that what's going to happen is the entire pharmaceutical industry is going to the cancer industry is going to be wiped out. All that.
Then they'll be selling this stuff.
They'll be poisoning people with cancer-causing agents, and then they give them radiation. It's just a nightmare. The really, really nasty people are concentrated in the pharmaceutical, petroleum, and military industries. And there's going to be a lot of these people removed from power, and all this stuff will be out there. So everyone's going to become young again over the next couple of decades. And we're all going to be rich, and we're going to start building new artificial planets and stuff. So we're headed for, this is something like, it's like when we've built the first city. It's going to be such a big change in our history that they're going to be talking about it for thousands and thousands of years. This will be, the biggest thing since civilization began, I think. Anybody who follows scientific magazines and the technology, even the stuff that they try to censor, even the corporate science magazines, if you keep reading them, the information is there. You can't hide it. We're headed for an entire new existence. This doesn't involve religion. It doesn't involve anything else, but we can become immortal on this world. And the other thing is that once these people are removed from control of the planet, a lot of taboo subjects and taboos will be explored. For example, it's now technically possible. You could make an animal that was a cross between a cat and a monkey, and you could give it the ability to speak. Now, that would be quite a nice friend to have, a sort of monk cat who could speak English, Now, this is something that we might be, we can do it. Now, if we want to or not, that's another question that we'll have to talk about. But the point is that the people will decide. It won't be some hidden committee of elders running a secret government who decides what technology we can have and what we can't have. The people will decide, and it'll be, an open debate. And some people, for example, will say, I don't want to extend my life. I want to live the way God made me and die at age of, 80 and whatever. And other people say, no, I want to look young and beautiful for 1,000 years. And it'll be their choice. So the point is right now we don't have a choice. We're controlled in secret. They tell us how to reproduce. They choose what information we get in our brains. They force us to live short lives. And then they generate all these wars and conflicts as part of their control mechanism. So when these people are removed, it's like all those Hollywood movies where people, suddenly they find out they're in an underground base and they don't have to be. It's going to be wonderful. I'm just so optimistic. It's just the problem is that the bad guys are still there in the United States, and they're still causing trouble. But I guarantee you, it's mathematically impossible for them to stay in power. And as I mentioned earlier with this incident in Italy, that at the very, very highest levels of global law enforcement, they've now figured out that the Federal Reserve Board, the people who had the ability to print dollars and use that to act like God, based on fraudulent international agreements, rewritten, something called the Schweitzer Accord. And that they officially lost the ability to control finance during Bill Clinton's time. And what's happened is that there's been no control at the top of the world's financial system since then. There's been a split. And the result was that they created, because nobody was in charge, and several different people different groups had dollar printing machines, they went out there and they created trillions, quadrillions of dollars that aren't backed by anything real. And the system was mathematically dysfunctional. And now they're fixing it. They're removing all the fraudulent dollars, all the derivatives dollars. They're freezing bank accounts. It's a very long, time-consuming process. And but when it's over, people are going to be taught an entire new history of the planet. They're all going to be rich and immortal. I know it sounds too good to be true, but if you do the research, you know it's real.
Well, if you were king, I think that's what would happen, Ben.
Well, I mean, if I was the king, the first thing I'd do is I would abolish the idea of having a king, and make everyone a king.
Yeah, you can't have too many cooks. Boil the broth.
You have a meritocracy is like a transparent pyramid. Like a song con, everybody can climb to the top if they're good enough, and because it's transparent,
that's what it's supposed to be.
The problem right now is they print out these dollars, and they, in a darkened room with nobody watching, they decide how to split them up. But if you have to divvy up the dollars in public, then it's much harder to cheat. That's why it's important to make the process transparent. Right now, central bankers, they produce money out of thin air, and then they divide it among their buddies, and they act like God. But if it was divided in public, okay, it's very difficult to cheat. You have to have absolute freedom of information when it comes to money. Otherwise, corruption enters, always. And that's what's going to happen. So there will be a transparent new system that will be, everybody can, see how it's done, and it's going to be like a real-time, live democracy, and the really good people, not the corrupt people, not the vicious people, but the competent people will rise to the top into the new system. And it's going to be very hard to cheat on. This is what's going to happen. Democracy, unfortunately, got hijacked because they took control of the press, and then they finally took control of the voting machines, and it became a farce. It just doesn't exist anymore.
Correct.
The last really democratic countries to be found on Earth are probably in places like Sweden and Norway, where they still have functioning democracy and freedom of press.
All right,
that's what they did. Everywhere else, the people with the money printing presses were able to corrupt and to take over.
Did the Japanese watch the Academy Awards over there?
No,
Was that a big
the Academy Awards, I mean, they've lost all their credibility. Their Oscars and their Nobel Prizes, they've lost credibility. When they go, giving peace prizes to war criminals and Oscars to movies that aren't popular, that advocate war, then people don't believe in those prizes anymore.
Or global warming. Or global warming.
Global warming, for Christ's sake. I mean, lies and deceit just don't work. You can lie for a while, but eventually the truth catches up. There's the thing that these people didn't understand. There's three things you can't buy with money: love, truth, and reality. And they tried to hide the truth, they tried to deny reality, and they thought they could buy love by paying for, prostitutes. And it worked for a while, but eventually it falls apart.
Well, I sure appreciate the always talking to you, Ben. The brightness shines through like a flashlight in a dark room. So keep it up. And
I'll be in China soon for the high-level negotiations, so hopefully I have lots of news next month.
Well, maybe we can talk to you direct from China if you'd like. Just give me an email and we'll do it.
I'll let you know. The day hasn't been set, but I'll let you know, and I'll let you know what's happening.
Thank you, Ben. Thanks a lot. Great to talk to you.
Thanks, you're a hero for the humanity,
Well, thank you. Thank you. Be well. Okay.
Yeah, you too.
Benjamin Fulford. Very, very interesting man. Okay, we will be back tomorrow night, on the first day of March. See you then.